Hey everybody, KC here. So today on Morning Newsbeat, a conversation with Lisa Sedlar, who is the founder and CEO of Green Zebra in Portland, Oregon. Green Zebra, popularly thought of as the company that tried to combine a 7-Eleven with a Whole Foods. Um, as you may know, if you've been reading Morning Newsbeat, Green Zebra has gone out of business. Took 10 years of a lot of work. I always thought it was a really interesting format with lots of potential. Not only had I written about Green Zebra over the years, I'd gotten to know Lisa when I was spending a lot of time in Portland, and I was a customer. I really liked their tuna melts with Mama Lil's peppers. Oh, I survived on those things sometimes. At any rate, basically last week, Green Zebra closed their doors. And Lisa was kind enough, and this is pretty soon, boy, the wounds have still got to be pretty raw, but was kind enough to come on Morning Newsbeat, do a Zoom conversation with me to talk about what happened, what she learned. Um, and I just thought it was really, really interesting, and I want to share it with you. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Lisa Sedlar. Well, Lisa Sedlar, welcome to Morning Newsbeat. I have to ask you the first question. You've had a hell of a month. How are you?
Mm, Thanks for asking, Kevin. I'm pretty okay. It's obviously a difficult thing to go through in closing a business, starting a business, closing a business, and my biggest concerns and worries here at the end were around my staff and making sure that they had a place to land safely. And I'm thankful that people all over Portland have reached out to me and said, "Hey, we have a job. We're hiring," and it looks like pretty much everyone's going to land at another awesome place to work in Portland. And some people are taking some time away, so that's nice to hear too.
Yeah. So, and I really want to kind of focus this on what you've learned from the experience because you did when you started this 10 years ago. Um, you you were doing something really very original, and that's it's tough to be really original, and it's tough to start a new business. Most new businesses don't succeed, and they 50% fail in the first year. So, but the first question I really want to ask you is to what degree you feel like you ran into the perfect storm in the sense that okay, you mean for you at a certain point you ran into COVID and then you ran into inflation and things that you know made surviving really really difficult. I mean, do you think at the end of the day were those the two things that sort of were the straws that broke the camel's back?
Oh yeah, for sure. So we've been hanging on by a thread since COVID started. We had to close two of our stores during COVID. One was in a business district, and people weren't going to work anymore. And the other was on the campus of Portland State, where kids weren't going to school anymore, students weren't going to school anymore. So we closed those two stores, and we were just hemorrhaging cash at that point. And I'll tell you something. At that point, my board of directors said, "You should close the business now and file bankruptcy and see if you can get bought out of bankruptcy." And I said, I'd like to try to do something else. I'd like to try to recapitalize the company, see if I can, um, just find a way. And so, as entrepreneurs do, we find ways. And so I went to our uh, primary lender and I said, "Hey, would you be willing to convert your debt to equity and loan us a little bit more money to get through this bumpy path that we're on?" And they said yes. Um, so that got us through to, just about a month ago. And we really just couldn't rebound from that time where we were hemorrhaging cash. We never really stopped fully bleeding there. And there were a lot of things at play in the universe around us. So at the end, what happened was the one of the companies that we had a loan with called their loan essentially. The owner of that facility died, and it went into a trusteeship, and the trustees said, "We want our money." And I said, we don't have it. I'm sorry. Is there something else we can do? And they said no. And so that was kind of the nail in our coffin at the end there.
Yeah. The I mean, even on the campus store, and I've written a lot about the campus store over the years because it was one of the places I was my go-to during those summers I was teaching at Portland State. How many times did I wax rhapsodic about the tuna melt with Mama Lil's peppers? I mean, it was like my favorite, one of my favorite things to eat.
Yeah.
And but even there, I know that at Portland State, even the night classes are not coming back because people don't want to go into downtown Portland at night, and that's those are really hard circumstances for anybody to overcome if you're trying to operate a retail store in downtown Portland.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true, Kevin. And we had several vendors that wouldn't deliver to that store anymore because they were afraid to go downtown. And to be really honest, I think that was overstated. Downtown is safe. There's still some stuff that happens like any large enough city. But it's way better. The last 6 months, things have gotten way better. And did things happen? Yep, we got robbed. We, experienced a lot of challenges with the community in terms of, we have a bottle bill in Portland, and the community that returns bottles for their career, quote unquote, is sometimes challenged. That community is very challenged and abusive and have mental health problems, and our staff have to deal with that. It is rough for sure. But is that the reason we closed, that we were experiencing problems with crime? No, that's not the primary reason we closed at all. It was really financial.
Yeah.
Portland's on the upswing right now. It's been on the, it was on a long downturn, and now it's on the upswing. And do I feel safe going to downtown Portland at night? I sure do. I do.
Well, that's good to know because you know how much I love Portland. So that's a really good thing to hear. The
Yeah.
other thing is people may forget that you were right before the pandemic this close to making that deal. The Mark Wahlberg, you were on his documentary show about all his investments, and he was this close to making a big investment in Green Zebra, which would have not only driven your Portland operations, but would have given you an enormous visibility and allowed you to expand your footprint. And then pandemic hit, and that got shut down. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how close you came.
No, the last thing Mark Wahlberg said to me was, "I'm in. Don't fuck this up. My kid's future depends on it." Those are the words he said to me.
F-bomb ever dropped on Morning Newsbeat. I knew it was going to be you.
Yeah, I do always have some sort of warning beforehand, like, folks, I grew up in Detroit. I'm probably going to say something that's offensive. Let you know. But anyway, yeah. And I said, hey, look, Mark, my kid's future depends on this also, and I'm not going to fuck it up. And I appreciate your investment. This is going to be great. And 2 weeks later, the pandemic hit. All the movie business shut down. The chain of gyms that he was invested in shut down. All the Wahlburger stores shut down. And he said, let's hit the pause button. And I said, okay, let's hit the pause button. And he said, can you go out and raise 4 million more over and above what I'm talking about putting in? And I said, I'll try. And I wasn't successful in raising another 4 million while we were hemorrhaging cash during the pandemic. And so that was the end of that. And it's okay. People are like, do you blame Mark Wahlberg? I'm like, no, I don't blame Mark Wahlberg. I mean, the pandemic happened. It's a reasonable response that he had. And he was a really great guy. I enjoyed meeting him.
So let's talk now. Let's talk about the concept, Green Zebra. I mean, you did a TED Talk 10 years ago. I know when you were starting the concept. You came out of New Seasons. You came out of Whole Foods. You were trying to create this really original thing. As you sort of look back, I mean, how do you sort of feel about that? Do you feel like you got it right, you got it, or did you look back and now say, okay, I got 60% or 70% of it right, but there's 30% I should have done differently? How do you, when you look back on it, how do you feel?
It's kind of,
listen, I know,
it's kind of too soon to say if what percentage I got right, what percentage I got wrong. I know the parts I got right were the people parts. I think that I'm still processing so much of it,
I
and
got you.
but the people part of it, when I founded the company, my idea was, let's clean up convenience stores. Let's flip them on their head, because convenience stores are kind of the last bastion of not necessarily treating their staff the best. Not all convenience stores. I'm not saying, Wawa does a really great job, Sheetz does a really great job, but the traditional convenience stores that you see on the corner that are kind of run down, there's one person working there. The store's dirty. They make their money selling cigarettes and big gulps and lottery tickets. And I thought, boy, this is a segment that's ripe for reimagining and making healthy. And so I still think that. I still think there's an opportunity to do that. And it's also really hard to make money in the small format. The reason there's one person working at the convenience store is because that's all they can afford.
Right.
And we had a model where we paid staff, we raised our minimum wage 7 times in 10 years. And I'm not saying we paid a living wage. We sure tried. We did, at the end, we were paying $16 an hour for our minimum wage. And is that a living wage? Not exactly. It depends if you're a single person. If you're, 4 people household, for sure it's not. But I would like to have paid $20 as minimum wage, but we just couldn't generate enough sales to be able to do that. We paid our staff members are in benefits such that we covered not only them, but their domestic partner and their dependents, which other stores just don't do. And there's a lot of things we did right in the way we took care of our staff, in the way that we took care of our community. And I can't point to any one thing that was like, you did this wrong. I actually think we got a lot of it right. And we just ran out of money at the end. The old adage of, how did you go bankrupt? Slowly and then suddenly. There's a good reason that's an old adage.
So one, and listen, I always admired the way you sort of treated your staff and your connection to the community. And I'd like to talk about that in a second. But I think that some would say that it was the right thing to do philosophically in terms of salary and benefits. But was it the right thing to do economically if you had not been as I'm not sure the word is generous, because I don't think your desire was to be generous. Your desire was to do the right thing. But if you had not had wages where they were, and you had not had benefits where they were, would you have been able to last longer? Or is that not fair? Or would it have just simply not been Green Zebra? Could you have done all those things and then it wouldn't have been Green Zebra? You would not
Exactly.
have you wouldn't have had the culture
exactly
that you
right.
wanted to have.
I mean, because part of flipping the convenience store model on its head was, let's take care of the people doing the work on the floor every single day. Let's make it so that they can pay their bills and take their kids to the doctor and not have to worry so much about paying the bills. So it would not have been Green Zebra if we did it a different way. And yeah, it's still just so fresh, Kevin. It's still at this point where I'm just processing it all every day. But that was kind of a non-negotiable for me, to pay people a fair wage and cover their insurance. That's a non-negotiable in terms of business for me.
Well, listen, I think there's a lot to be said for saying, if you're going to do it, you got to do it right. Because if you try to do it, but you do it wrong, then you can blame yourself for all sorts of other stuff, right? Like you weren't true to what your vision was.
Sure.
I just.
Well, I think the
one of the reasons I
main
asked the
thing too
question
is that.
oh, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go.
I was going to say, one of the reasons I asked the question is I'm anticipating what the email I'm going to get when this runs, and just that people will say, yeah, but if you paid them $14 an hour instead of $16 an hour and had not provided benefits, maybe she'd still be in business. That's just going to be the email. And
I get it. I totally get that. And that's not the thing. That wasn't the final nail in our coffin at all. And in fact, the stores were all generating profit, just not enough profit to cover our overhead expenses. Um, and we wouldn't have been competitive in our market area in terms of recruiting if we didn't do it either.
Right.
So there's a lot of reasons to pay people a fair wage and offer full scale benefits. Not only is it just one the right thing to do, but it also, to be competitive in the marketplace, you have to do that in Portland.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that certainly, I mean, you tried a lot of different things. I know in the store that you ended up closing, at one point you had a bar in that store, which I thought was great. I love the bar. In fact, I still have my green zebra glasses.
Oh, great, good.
Uh, and, and then you did food and you had food service and I know you got rid of food service at one point when you came back after the pandemic, because that was just, again, that's a big expense. So you were playing with the model within the format of being a C-store while trying to remain absolutely consistent with what the vision was to begin with.
Well, that's part of being an entrepreneur, is playing with the model and trying new stuff out and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And um, having the bar, we called it the Z bar, little play on words with zebra. The landlord thought, well, it would be cool to have a little bar for this community, because we were in a we were anchoring a development that had apartments above us and so on. And Portland being a very beer centric city, we had several different beers on tap, and you could refill your growler. And we actually were the first ones to market with a crowler, which is the can that you fill. And so that was really fun. But in the end, people were getting drunk at the bar and it became a liability and it was difficult. And so it wasn't a profit generating center. So we shut it down. We tried it and we shut it down. And I think businesses don't try enough things. They stick with the state, and you got to try stuff, and you got to ask your staff, like, what are your ideas on this? How do you think we can do this? What can we do to improve? Oh, you have an idea to design something new? Let's try it.
Right.
So I think fiddling with the model is something that you have to do all the time. Otherwise, you're just coasting along, and before you know it, you have stores that are rooted in the 70s and have never changed.
Tell me a story about a staff member who blew you away at some point, who just, you've got all these wonderful people. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Yeah, there's got to be a story in there somewhere
Dude,
about
I have
somebody
so
who
many.
just knocked your socks off.
No. I could do a whole interview just on that. But one time we had a snowstorm in Portland, and when it snows in Portland, we're not prepared for snow. Like,
Oh, you're not.
it's terrible. Like the whole city grinds to a halt. 3 inches of snow, the city grinds to a halt. People abandon their cars on the highway. It's terrible. And this one employee walked 11 miles to get to his shift at the store because he wanted to make sure that the community had an outlet to purchase groceries, because everyone else around us was closed. And this guy walked 11 miles in the snow, like, unbelievable. And our COO, our slash president COO, her name's Evelyn Murphy. I've never met anyone like Evelyn. I've never met anyone whose performance review gets better every year when it starts out at the highest and keeps getting better. So many examples of staff members going the extra mile for customers, walking them and their groceries to their house, not just to their car, but let me take this all the way to your house. It just, like, so many, literally it could be an interview in and of itself. But I'll tell you, there's one person that I worked with in my life, and that's Evelyn. And she's the best person, head and shoulders above everyone else I've ever worked with. Someone should hire her, and they will get more than they could possibly imagine.
Have you learned anything about, based on this experience, what you think? Have you learned something about what people want in terms of buying, in terms of what the product offerings that you were making, and also what they're willing to pay for? Because I think sometimes what people want and what they're willing to pay for are two entirely different things.
We learned that during the last year, basically, where people want convenience. They want to be able to shop by the meal. They just, come in and pick up a few things, and then they come back tomorrow and do the same thing. Like, that is a trend that will continue. However, there's a point where after 9 quarters of nonstop price increases, um, that people started to say, I can't afford to shop here as often as I did previously. My 3 or 4 things became more expensive, and so I shop here less frequently. And that really made the biggest difference, was all of those cost increases. And, big stores can absorb some of those better than little stores. And so in order to be able to pay our bills, we had to raise the prices. And people are like, oh, grocery stores are making so much money. The big stores are making so much money. The little stores aren't. And those price points became kind of difficult for people at the end. And our sales went down. The last year, our sales really took a nosedive with the constant price increases. I mean, there were times where I was raising prices across 400 items every week. And I was like, what? There's another 400 prices for me to increase, because I did a lot of the pricing myself. I was like, when is this going to stop? Well, the answer is it's not. It hasn't stopped yet. It's slowed down though.
Yeah.
That's good for everyone. But it hasn't stopped.
To what extent also was that, and I'm just guessing here, so many of your suppliers were small companies too. It wasn't like you were dealing with the crafts of the world, or you were dealing with small companies who were perhaps less able to absorb their cost increases and therefore had to pass those costs along to you.
100%. Like over a third of the products that we sell or sold at Green Zebra were local products. And a lot of those were small bakeries, mom and pop shops that are baking the product at night, delivering it in the morning, and need to get paid on it right away in order for them to stay in business. So, and certainly the produce vendors as well. We had a lot of mom and pop produce folks growing nearby. And by us purchasing product from them, we're strengthening our regional food economy, which is what we always set out to do. And they need their money. It's not like they have huge cash reserves. It's a perishable business. So it definitely is a little bit of a bummer for them as well, because they just lost 3 stores of business. And I'm happy to say that we paid the small vendors. That was our main priority, was as we were going out of business, we wanted to have enough money to pay our staff, including their paid time off, and our small vendors. The big vendors of the world, they're going to be okay, but paying those small mom and pops, that was a huge priority for us.
Is there something you want to, had you gotten to the point where you could open a 4th store or a 5th store? Was there something you wanted to try that you say, oh man, I wish just had a chance to do that?
Yeah, I always have ideas. I'm an idea generator. So the next store, my thought was, I want to gamify it a little bit more, both from an app perspective. So show people the impact of on their phones, that I do this on my phone. Show them the impact of where their food is coming from, how far away it is from their house, and the dollars that go toward these local folks. Like you could have a little app on your phone and it goes to, Bob's farm, and
Sure.
you get to see Bob employing 7 people that pick the berries and, deliver it back to your house. And then you get a coupon because you're buying berries from Bob's farm. So I had some ideas around that, really showing the impact of what it means to support local, because local, just that idea has become commodified over the years, and people don't understand anymore how important it is and the impact that it has in terms of our regional food economy. And then another thing, I just like having fun in general, and I like playing games. I'm very sports minded. And so I had thought that it would be really cool to turn an aspect of the store into kind of a little gaming area, have the basketball that comes down, have some pinball machines, some old school cool pinball machines. I like the X-Men game myself. And, just a bunch of different cool stuff that makes life fun. I thought, going to the store, getting a cup of coffee, grabbing a sandwich, playing a quick game of pinball, and then headed out on your day would make the world a little bit happier.
The and I know at one point you were talking, I know you were talking, because I think you were even talking to Mark Wahlberg about this, was the idea that you thought this was a format that could have a lot of locations up and down the West Coast. I mean, you were ambitious, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I think that's
No,
all positive.
you have to be
Do
as an entrepreneur.
do you do you think you did that have too much of an outsized kind of presence in terms of how you're playing? I'm just curious. Do you look back and say, I should have focused just on Portland, or maybe focused on Seattle, but not thought about that kind of broad expansion? Or do you just think, is that just, I don't know, inherent in who you are and how to grow a business?
Oh, I'd say that having healthy convenience stores up and down the West Coast and everywhere is something that wasn't born out of, I want to make as much money for myself and the company as possible, which of course you want to make money for the shareholders. You want to make money for those who invested in the business. Of course, that's always top of mind. And going back to the idea of changing the landscape of the convenience store industry. Lots of convenience chains have 300 stores or 200 stores or 100 stores, you know. And so I thought, well, yeah, there could be 100 green zebras. There could be 400 green zebras. And if that happens, we will have changed how people eat for the better. We will have changed our relationship to our regional food economy for the better. We will have changed how we take care of our employees for the better. And that will affect the whole world, not just the convenience store business. So yeah, I had some big dreams, and that's okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's also okay to start small and stay small. Both of those things are fine.
We talked about how you took care of your employees, also how you took care of your customers. The other thing, I don't want to let this go by without talking a little bit about how you focused on the local community. Because one of the things you really did at Green Zebra is you tried to connect as much as possible to organizations and the people beyond just the people you were serving, but in a broader sense to serve the community of Portland. Talk a little bit just for a second about why that was sort of a bedrock principle for you.
Well, because people come first, right? And the nonprofit organizations in our community that are focused on food equity in general, education and environment, like those things are all really important to a functioning society. So it made sense to me that we would partner with these organizations and help them get their message out to the world about the importance of equity and taking care of the environment and taking care of our children through education, and hopefully making a dent in ending hunger in this world. So will we ever end hunger? No, but can we make inroads to doing that? For sure. And can grocery stores have a big role to play in that, and convenience stores? For sure. We should. Like, it's a no-brainer that we are helping the community around us. And it just brings so much joy to be able to do that too. Like, there's no downside.
I suspect it's too early to ask you this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because that's what I do.
What am I going to do?
Well, yeah. I mean, do you have a sense of what your next act is, or is it like I just need time?
Um, well, you do have a couple baseball mitts on your desk behind you. I am a big baseball fan. The Detroit Tigers are my team.
Well, the Mets could use a ninth inning reliever, just for the record.
I actually have pretty good
My
arms.
my shoulder's gone, so I can't help them.
Well, what I was going to say is I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive around to a few different ballparks and try to hit as many as I can for a couple of months. And just kind of unplug and process everything that's happened for the last 10 years or so. Environment is important to me. Our world is on fire. There isn't a day that goes by that environmentally I'm not frightened of the direction that we're headed as a human race. And so I might work in something in environment. I also really love caring for others. And so, it's possible I might go down a whole different career path and maybe rethink what senior living situations look like these days. I spent a lot of time with my dad at his senior living center before he died 2 years ago. And it was okay. He lived in one of the better ones, thankfully. And even that was an experience that needs to be rethought. What does it look like for people who are aging, and how do we take care of them? And what does their food look like? And what are their activities? And how do we engage their minds and pull out from them, what we can learn? It's like we put people away in a home and we forget about them. And I don't like that idea. I think we could innovate that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, just make sure you hit all the baseball parks on the West Coast. I mean, I've been to them all, so I can say
You've been to every baseball
I've been
park?
to everyone. So I can tell you with some authority. In fact, I've been to so many. I've been to 50 or 52 because I've been doing it for so long. There are places I've been to 2 and sometimes 3 stadiums because they've changed over the years. You got to hit the ones on the West Coast though, because
yeah.
Seattle, San Francisco, Dodger Stadium, and San Diego are some of the best ballparks anywhere. So
Yeah, I've never been to San Diego. I've been to all the other ones on the West Coast,
it's
but
just great.
yeah, I've never been to San Diego.
And here's the thing, and if you come out east, we'll go to Citi Field together. But the one that people are surprised, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is the best ballpark. It is so great.
Okay, what makes it great though? Like, is it the concessions? Is it the view? Is it
Concessions are great. The view of the field is great. The way it's kind of constructed is terrific. It sort of nestles into this little place. Everybody's got a good view.
It's
And
better than
it's,
Wrigley
and
Field?
it's walkable from downtown, which to me is always like a big deal.
Yeah. I always thought Wrigley Field was the best park because it's right in the smack dab in the middle of a great neighborhood, and it's got a vibe for sure.
Well, Wrigley and Fenway always are they're like churches for me. I just
Exactly.
but I would say I'm really I'm glad. Well, first I'm proud of both of us because we both got through this without crying.
I know it was tough.
And I will say, just want to say, as somebody who is both has written about you for as long as you've been doing this, and who was a customer when I was during all those summers that I was in Portland, I'm gonna miss Green Zebra. To me, it wasn't just an interesting experiment, but it was someplace that was part of the fabric of my downtown life, and I always appreciated that. So
Okay, well, come on, now you're making it happen.
but I just want to say, listen, while I miss Green Zebra, I'm going to trust in the fact that I'm not going to miss you, because we'll stay in touch. And I think that
For sure.
whatever you do, I think that it's going to be special. And
No, thanks, Kevin.
because you're special and what you came up with was special. And so I really appreciate you doing this. This is really early in the process to be public about what's gone on. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate you. So thank you so much for doing this.
Back at you, Kevin. I appreciate you too. And thanks for taking the time to hear the side of the Green Zebra story.
Listen, it didn't end. What didn't end the way we wanted it to end, but it was still it was a great story while it lasted. So and here's the deal: somebody someday is going to make this format work. They're just gonna, and it'll be a big company with better resources, but they're going to figure it out, and they'll do it under circumstances that are perhaps less dire, and we'll have more room to make it work. But somebody's going to
maybe I'll sell them my recipe for kombucha slushies.
There you go. Hey, listen, take care. Good to see you.
A lot, Kevin.